The cameras flick on, the lights go soft, and Piers Morgan leans forward, not with a shout, but with a calm that signals something more dangerous than rage: certainty. He's not a stranger to controversy. In fact, he thrives on it. But this time, the subject is not politics or culture wars. It's the monarchy. And the man in the crosshairs is Prince Andrew. This is not a scandal born overnight. It's a shadow stretching over years, growing longer with every unsealed document, every newly revealed connection, and every question that remains unanswered. But when Piers Morgan speaks now, it feels different, not because of what he says, but because of what he suggests, that the time for silence is over. He's been circling this for months, sometimes blunt, sometimes just curious. But his tone has sharpened, and in the latest broadcasts, the words take shape with more weight, not as speculation, but as demand. The question is no longer, was Prince Andrew involved with Jeffrey Epstein? That question, for many in the public mind, has already been answered, not by proof, but by pattern. What matters now is accountability. And Morgan, whatever else he may be, understands the theater of accountability better than most. Before we go further, let's pause for a moment. You've made it this far into the story, seeking answers, watching this narrative unfold piece by piece. But if you're watching and haven't yet subscribed, now's the time. Subscribe to Crownverse, where the real story of the monarchy is told in full, not just whispered behind the gates. The Epstein scandal is no longer fresh news, but its reach continues to unsettle institutions far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. And Prince Andrew's name, once insulated by tradition, rank, and protocol, is now tethered to one of the most disturbing criminal networks in modern history. Morgan, ever the provocateur, sees this not just as a headline, but as a test of the Crown's credibility. It's not the first time he's weighed in. Years ago, he called for Andrew to come clean. At the time, it seemed performative, just another celebrity jab in a media cycle built on outrage. But lately, his tone has shifted. The words are colder, the delivery more precise. Less about clickbait, more about consequence. On one episode, Morgan questions the nature of Andrew's silence. Why hasn't he spoken? Why haven't we heard everything, every detail he can give? If he's innocent, why not act like it? It's rhetorical, but it cuts. And then there's the settlement, the private deal between Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre, reported, discussed, and dissected. To the public, it looked like a retreat. To Morgan, it looks like a strategy, and not one that favors transparency. He doesn't just say it. He brings in others, authors, legal analysts, former insiders. They discuss constitutional risk, royal image, and the future of the monarchy in light of Andrew's continued presence on the fringe. It's carefully constructed, not a witch hunt, but a trial by implication. Morgan isn't demanding an arrest. He's demanding clarity. And in doing so, he speaks not just for tabloids, but for the portion of the public who wonder if royal privilege still places some people above hard truths. There's something else at play, though, a subtle twist. Because while Morgan remains a critic of Harry and Meghan, his sharpest arrows, at least lately, have been aimed squarely at Andrew. And that creates tension. A dynamic where even loyalists of the Crown must now reckon with internal failure. The palace, for its part, says nothing. It rarely does, but silence does not mean peace, not when the court of public opinion is in session. In one recent panel, Morgan hosted a debate on whether the monarchy could withstand another wave of revelations. The answer from his guests was mixed. Some defended the Crown's institutional resilience, but others warned that public trust, once lost, is not easily reclaimed. Morgan nodded, not approving, but aware. Because that's the point. The monarchy's survival doesn't rest solely on tradition or lineage, it rests on perception. And right now, the perception is uncertain. What happens when an institution built on decorum is dragged into the same murky waters as political scandal? What happens when a prince is no longer seen as a figurehead, but as a man who refuses to speak fully, even as the world demands it? Morgan poses the question. The audience leans in. His tone isn't frenzied, it's surgical. He's not dissecting Andrew the man, but Andrew the symbol of a generation of royals who believed that discretion was enough to guard against accountability. But that age may be ending. The public appetite has changed. It no longer accepts silence as dignity. It demands answers, transparency, consequences. And when those don't come from the palace, people like Morgan step in, not always gracefully, not always fairly, but decisively. There's risk in this, for Morgan, for the media, for the monarchy. Because the more these stories escalate, the more the line between truth and theater begins to blur. And yet, the facts remain. Andrew stepped back from public duties. His military titles were returned to the crown. He was absent from key family appearances. But he has not been exiled, not formally, not fully. And that, Morgan argues, is the problem. He doesn't want Andrew punished. He wants him held accountable. And he wants the palace to stop pretending that optics alone can substitute for action. In this narrative, Morgan positions himself not as a gossip columnist, but as a moral provocateur. A man forcing uncomfortable questions into public light because those who should answer them refuse to speak. Whether that position is genuine or self-serving is perhaps irrelevant. The message lands either way. And the palace, though silent, feels the tremors. They feel them in press coverage, in public commentary, in the slow erosion of deference. Because when even the monarchy's media allies begin to question its judgment, something shifts. We are watching not just a scandal, but a recalibration. The rules are changing. The boundaries of loyalty, expectation, and image are being redrawn. And in that space, Piers Morgan, loud, divisive, unfiltered, has carved out something few expected, a voice of institutional pressure. Not against the monarchy, but within it. He's not asking the crown to fall. He's demanding it rise. To meet the moment with truth, not tradition. To recognize that the world outside the gates is no longer satisfied with gesture and silence. This isn't theater. It's consequence. If you've made it here, if you're watching the way these stories unfold, the way silence meets scrutiny, then you know how important it is to follow what matters beneath the surface. Subscribe now to Crownverse, where the truths we explore may be quiet, but never hidden.